Greetings and welcome to the Introduction to Astronomy. In this week's Misconceptions in Astronomy, we are going to talk about Saturn and find out if it is the only planet with rings. So let's go ahead and get started. So Saturn we see here is a very prominent ringed planet and well known in the solar system. But is it the only planet with rings? And the answer is no. All four of the giant planets have a ring system to them. Now, Saturns were the first to be discovered. They were actually seen by Galileo, but not identified as rings back in the early 1600s with his small telescope. As telescopes got a little larger, they were actually identified and confirmed as rings in 1659 by Christian Huygens. And we can see his diagram here showing the tilts of Saturn as different positions around the sun as it moves, and showing how that would affect the appearance of the rings, that sometimes we'd see them and sometimes we wouldn't. And that was because one of the things that caused Galileo issues was that the rings were there, that there were two blobs, one on either side, and sometimes they were there and sometimes they were gone, depending on the positioning of Saturn and Earth in their orbits around the sun. So they are by far the most prominent and the best studied of the ring systems. And we can see one of those images here. This is in fact a detailed image of the rings as collected by the Cassini spacecraft. And we can see that the rings are very complex, not just a little bit of material there, but billions of little individual moonlets that each orbit around Saturn. And here we can see all the complex patterns that form within those rings. Now, do other planets have rings? Well, that's very true. And in fact, we can see rings around Jupiter as shown in the image here. Jupiter has a very faint, thin ring and is best seen from behind when the light is scattered through the ring. So harder to see from Earth. So in order to see the ring of Jupiter, the best way to do it is to go out beyond Jupiter and look back toward Earth. Well, we have spacecraft that have done that, including the one that imaged this here. We see little bits of sunlight coming through Jupiter's atmosphere, and we can also see the distinct ring there. But it is nowhere near as prominent as that of Saturn. Now, Uranus also has rings. They were actually the second to be discovered. And it has a very dark set of rings. Again, here we see them as imaged by the Voyager spacecraft that traveled out to Uranus. There were actually 5 rings discovered in 1977, discovered when a star happened to pass behind each of these rings, and it dimmed its light. So that was the confirmation of rings around Uranus, and it was quite an accidental discovery, but then led us to look more closely for rings around the other large planets with the spacecraft that headed out there, now that we knew they were not confined just to Saturn. And finally, Neptune. Yes, Neptune does have rings, or at least partial rings, or ring arcs, we can see here. And the bar is blocking out the image of Neptune itself, which would be overwhelmingly bright by comparison. But we can then see that there are rings, and some of those rings have some little gaps in them too. So it's very interesting that each of the rings around each of the planets are a little bit different. So we can start to understand maybe a little bit more about ring systems now that we have more to study. And then the question will be, are there other rings out there? Well, not within our solar system, but exoplanets may have rings. And if they could be detected, there are some potential ones, as of the recording of this, that have been thought about, may be ring systems around exoplanets, but nothing that has been able to be confirmed at this point. But as with the exoplanets, it's an even more difficult thing to detect. And as the technology improves, we're finding more and more exoplanets. It's quite likely we will start finding ring systems around other planets as well. It seems like they are a very common part of planetary formation. So let's go ahead and finish up with our summary. And what we've looked at today is we talked a little bit about Saturn, and it has the most prominent of the ring systems. But each of the 4 outer planets has some kind of ring system around it. And the potential for rings outside our solar system is being studied, but has not been confirmed, at least not as of the time I am recording this video. So that concludes this misconception on Saturn being the only planet with rings. We'll be back again next week for another misconception in astronomy. So until then, have a great day, everyone, and I will see you in class.